Guest speakers include Luigi Chinetti Jr., the son of the legendary Luigi Chinetti Sr., who brought Ferrari to North America in the early 50s and founded the North American racing team called NART. So because we're doing lemons, I don't usually wear t-shirts, as most people know, but I got my fresh, brand new lemon shirt today, so I'm sporting it.
Wait till he comes out and you see his shorts.
Okay, here we go, Luigi, here we go.
Just to begin with, people think that I was a racing driver. I raced, but Lynn was a racer. And there's a big difference between somebody that raced and somebody that was a racer. So just as an intro, you'll know what you're getting into. And that was my dad at about probably 7 or 8. And the look in his eyes is the same one that you'll see about 40 years later. And this is when he worked for Nicola Romeo at Alfa Romeo. Well, Alfa Romeo was later on. And so this was about when he
1920.
Yeah, he was 19 and he was a master lathe operator. So the folks that thought that he was just a journeyman car salesman that sold race cars and then taught somebody into racing with them. Not true. And that was at Reims, I think, when he was driving a Grand Prix Alfa Romeo, and there were the Mercedes there, and you could see the driver's outfits are very, very impressive. Those were wonderful. Now this is the Alfa garage and showroom in Paris, and that was designed by Mallet Stevens, the brothers. They are pretty much responsible for the architectural in the 30s, the Art Deco. I mean, you can see the way the lettering, the font is, it's just spectacular. And that was when they won Raymond Sommer and Dad. And again, the driver's outfits, but Raymond Sommer with the knit helmet, knit whatever, the French scarf, and the cigaretto back in the, I mean, they were pretty happy and pretty informed. And this is a very, very difficult thing. He won Le Mans in 1932, co-driving with Ayrton Senna. And he writes to his mother and says, "Winner of the Grand Prix at Le Mans, love, kisses to everybody." Gee, that was a very pounding your chest. And this is when they were driving with Marquis de Gainsbourg and Alpha 2.3 at the Monte Carlo race. And notice the way the trousers ended. You know, you can tell by the era, the way they were dressed. And they started in Tallinn, which is about as far north as you can get on the continent in Europe. The heaters were wonderful in those days. They didn't exist.
And the gentleman on the right, he was a saboteur and got a medal for helping France during the war.
Yeah, he evidently sabotaged a munitions train from the Germans to go to the Shelby. He sabotaged them. So all these loyalty got their feet wet in the war. And that was a laissez-passer that let Dad go from Paris to Monte Carlo in 1940 when the Germans were doing their goose-stepping all over France. And how he got, as an Italian, a laissez-passer, a free pass to go to Monte Carlo, we never figured it out. And when he came to the US, he was an enemy alien. And he got a job for Rogers Aircraft Company in Long Island City as a master machinist, but he was an enemy alien. And after the war, they wanted him to stay on, but he had other plans. You'll know this name. This is Zora Duntov. And we had a tugboat. I'd go at Langhorne on the dirt, and he was driving. He wasn't very quick. And this is a very complicated contract that Mr. Ferrari did with Dad for selling automobiles in America in 1940. I think it's dated 1948.
1948.
And that was December. And he, my mother, well, Dad, my mother and I Alfa, I think it was a Moussigny Pass, in a Citroën, and again, heaters weren't much in vogue then. And this is when he won the 24 Hours at Spa in Belgium. And about an hour before the end, he says he avoided a dog. Hard to say, but the back and the front looked pretty much the same. And this is when he went to qualify at Indy with an Alfa. I don't remember the model, but it was a Grand Prix one. And, well, he didn't qualify, but that was the car. And this is when they were, I think it was at Reims, with the Alfa and the Type. I don't recall, maybe 308, but I don't recall. Anyway, he qualified very well, but he said the single open wheel cars were never his thing. But when it came to closed wheel cars, this is when he won the, I think it was a big, I can't tell you the distance, but it was substantial. At Montpellier with the banking, and you can tell he's got a grin on his face. He was very happy, and to keep his guts in, he had that belt. And my mother with the sunglasses, she was pretty happy too. And this is a young version of me with a cowboy shirt on, and my mother was she was pretty attractive. For a mother, she did pretty well. This is a wonderful photo. The Antula, that's the last lap of a 24-hour race where he drove 23 and a half. And to be able to see that from your cockpit, the last lap, and the fellow with the bent knee is his co-driver, Lord Selston, who drove about half an hour, but that's a wonderful, that's something every driver likes to see when they're leading. And that's when he got the flag. And that's what he looked like about 5 minutes after having driven the 24 hours. He still looked reasonably in good shape. And this is toward the end, and there he looked pretty tired. And all he had to do was keep it together, and he did. Never missed, didn't do anything wrong. That was his deal. Mr. Ferrari used to call him a dromedary, because he just didn't stop. And that's a few moments after the race. Lord Selston is on the right. Dad, a tired dad, is on the left. And my mother was pretty pleased with the results. And that was at Langhorne. I think it was Duntov in November. I'm not sure. It could have been, I'll maybe remember it. Charlie Kirchhoffer was the mechanic in the back. He was a Bugatti specialist. He was in the Midwest. And Dad was driving. This was a tugboat at Langhorne on the dirt. It was never born to do that. Okay, if you can figure out which one is me, good damn luck to you. And this is a very formal request from Mr. Raymond Sommer's wife, asking my mother for 6 pairs of nylons, best quality, extra quality, size 9.5, 3 colors, transparent, at Saks Fifth Avenue. And that's Dad driving, testing the car at, John and I couldn't figure out whether it was Modena or Maranello, and I don't recognize it, but the fellow in the sunglasses, Aurelio Lampredi, who was the designer of all those engines, and that was just testing the car outside of the factory. And that was during the race with Tom Cole driving it, and well, you'll see what happens. And there's a Cunningham in the background, but that little Ferrari ended up that way. And Tom Cole, I think he was beheaded maybe, but he didn't make it out. And this is this is for everybody who remembers Cobras. That's Carroll Shelby on the left. And he's got a lot of teeth there. He's pretty happy. And my mother with her sunglasses again. And the mechanic on the back is Senegardi was his name. These guys were all just wonderful. The factory guys, they would loan us the fellows, and they'd come to work in the U.S. for the season, but they were all just absolutely spectacular. And that was Dad. Alan Cannell is the driver and the sponsor on the left, Charlie Kirchhoff on the right. Pedrotti was looking over there. I think there was the ignition, but Dad was the fellow that tuned the car. That was his specialty. And there you see him practicing his specialty. Because he mettait au point, was the way they would say. And in English it would be bring to the point. But he did it for the winning car at Le Mans, and he just set up a car to run properly and as long as it could, and it never broke. Now this is a very difficult photo because he was very much of a show. He showed off his trophies. He's got the trophy on the floor, my mother's magazines on top, and her parrot on top of that.
That's a little more trophy.
And that was the family with the parrot, and again the same trophy. Now this is a picture that I really like. This is, okay, you see the fellow on the left? Now he's got the, plaid shirt, black helmet, and the khakis, and the white socks, and loafers. And that's Dan Gurney.
That's fun.
And this is, I took it at Nassau, and the fellow getting in the car is the Marquis de Portago, who was famous, unfortunately, for running off the racetrack at the Media and wiping out a number of people and effectively ending the race. And this is a letter from him to Dad, and you see the little crown on the left with the name underneath, so he was the Marquis. And the address on the right, Avenue Foch, probably one of the best addresses in all of France. I mean, yeah, all of France, and certainly all of Paris. And he describes how he was doing in the race and all of that. And he owned a Monza Ferrari at the time. And you can read it in English. Please sell it as soon as possible, even for $5,000, and as I am very broke. And this is the Marquis de Portago. He's broke. And this is Richie Ginter explaining to Dad. I think he was driving a P3 for us at that time, I'm not sure. And he's explaining to Dad what the car was doing. Oh, this is the tire, right?
That's the tire.
Okay. This is the factory telling us what they're going to be, what we're going to be getting as a car. And this is to inform you that today we are shipping this automobile, et cetera, and we are sorry we're putting used tires on it because we have no new tires. And this, anybody here recognize the lady? They're all too young. They're all too young, forget it.
Zsa Gabor.
Is Porphyria Ruby Rose. Now this is the factory transporter. This is, this is very, very sophisticated, very high tech. This is the front engine Dino 246 GP car at Sebring. And, they really took care of the cars. They got as much dirt on them after the race as during it. And this is really interesting because this was loading the cars after Sebring. So you have the Ferrari insignia in the background, while the car behind that, Luigi Chinetti Motors there. So the marriage was really fine, and the mechanics just sort of putting it back. But you can see how clean the pits are and all that. And this is when, drivers didn't make a lot of money, and we didn't have much money. And the fellow with the Shell jerry can is Phil Hill. And he's filling the car because, gasoline costs money, And this is Dad with, in the Mexican road race. I think they finished third behind the Mercedes. But the fellow on the right, who sponsored the car, is John Shakespeare. And if anybody here is a fisherman, his dad invented the Shakespeare fishing reel. Are there a few fishermen here?
Just a few from this area.
And this, let's see, this is the Art of Khan talking to, writing to Dad about the letter because he's making a special, they're making a special car for him in Italy. So we had some interesting customers. And this is a car that I drew up. It was a Scaglietti body car. It was on a 250 GT 2+2. And this is a very expensive car. This is worth $27 million the last time it was sold.